Welcome back to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding the Indian Prime Minister's highly anticipated three-nation diplomatic tour kicking off on July 6th. And let me tell you right up front, this is definitely no standard itinerary of handshakes and photo ops. The data shows we're looking at a massive, highly calculated maneuver on the global geopolitical chessboard. So, here's how we're breaking this down. First, the overarching Indo-Pacific strategy. Second, we head to Indonesia for defense and minerals. Third, Australia for uranium and security. Fourth, a truly historic visit to New Zealand. And finally, the big strategic takeaways.
All right, part one, the Indo-Pacific strategy.
To really grasp the weight of these individual visits, we first have to understand the playing field. This entire region is a place where global trade, military presence, and future technologies absolutely collide. Our sources make it crystal clear that this trip is squarely aimed at securing critical nuclear, military, and economic partnerships. Every single deal signed on this tour is designed to secure supply chains, address regional power dynamics, and essentially build a massive web of alliances. Moving on to part two, Indonesia, focusing on defense and minerals. A first stop is Indonesia, which is the world's largest Muslim-majority nation. Crucially, it sits a mere 200 kilometers away from India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Because of that incredibly vital proximity, India is looking to elevate their comprehensive strategic partnership by pivoting pretty heavily toward defense exports. This actually marks the first major bilateral visit since the two nations upgraded their relationship back in May 2018. What's truly fascinating here is how India is actively looking to arm Indonesia with high-tech weaponry. Indonesia wants to establish itself as a new military power in the region. And to support this, India is finalizing agreements to export its formidable BrahMos missiles. But, it doesn't stop there. The two nations are also showing strong mutual interest in manufacturing Scorpion-class submarines. These are often referred to as underwater hunters. It's a massive strategic positioning effort to counter regional hegemony and build up a much stronger defense network. But the military aspect? That's really just half the story. The other half is all about critical minerals. Right now, Chinese companies command a staggering 75% of Indonesia's nickel processing capacity. And nickel, of course, is a massive, absolutely crucial component in the manufacturing of EV or electric vehicle batteries. So why does this matter so much? Well, according to International Energy Agency reports cited in our source, by the year 2040, a staggering 44% of the world's refined nickel will reside solely in Indonesia. Currently, India imports 80% of its ferronickel for steel production from Indonesia. So, to break these current monopolies and fuel its own booming EV sector, India is using this trip to push hard for immediate joint mineral ventures and processing plants right on Indonesian soil.
Let's jump to part three, Australia. We're talking uranium and security.
As we move to Australia, the focus shifts pretty dramatically from missiles to high-tech energy. There's actually a fascinating logical chain hidden behind this leg of the trip. India has massive ambitions for artificial intelligence, which obviously means building huge AI data centers. Now, these centers require colossal amounts of electricity. To meet that massive energy demand sustainably, India is turning to nuclear power. But to run nuclear reactors, you desperately need a reliable fuel source. And that is exactly where Australia comes in. That fuel source is uranium, and Australia just happens to hold a massive 35% of the global reserves. We're talking roughly 1.7 million tons of untapped potential sitting right there. Now, while a civil nuclear agreement was signed between India and Australia back in 2014, it really hasn't been fully implemented. So this trip aims to finalize the commercial deals required to finally unlock that agreement, allowing India to tap into Australia's massive, underutilized uranium basket. Alongside energy, there's also a brilliant defense angle here. Imagine a giant geographical padlock. By combining India's control of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands with Australia's Cocos Islands, you essentially create a locked gate right over the Malacca Strait. The crucial point here is that 80% of China's oil trade passes directly through this exact strait. The source explains that the potential of an India-Australia maritime lock presents a severe vulnerability for Chinese trade routes in the event of any regional conflict. It's honestly a prime example of geographic leverage. To tighten this lock, India and Australia are deepening their security web. They're already coordinating through the Quad Alliance, but furthermore, thanks to the 2021 Mutual Logistics Support Agreement, any movement by foreign submarines in the Indian Ocean can be immediately tracked. And because Australia is part of the US-led Five Eyes intelligence network, This crucial maritime location data can be instantly shared with the Indian Navy. This increased cooperation is also seen as a direct counter to recent moves by other regional powers, like China's attempts to establish a military base in the Solomon Islands. All right, part 4, New Zealand, a truly historic diplomatic visit.
For our final stop, we head to New Zealand, and we are literally witnessing history here. This is the first time an Indian Prime Minister has stepped foot in New Zealand in nearly 40 years. To put that in perspective, the last visit was in 1986. That's the exact same year the original Top Gun hit theaters. That massive gap makes this visit incredibly significant for their bilateral relations.
A major item on the agenda is a stalled free trade agreement. This proposed deal is seriously lucrative. 100% of Indian goods going to New Zealand would be tariff-free, and 95% of New Zealand goods going to India would be tariff-free. However, there's been some political infighting within the New Zealand government, with their foreign minister expressing concerns about the deal. So, a key goal of this visit is to smooth over those internal differences so the agreement can actually pass through their parliament. If they can finalize these trade agreements, the financial payoff is immense. The Indian government is setting up a single-desk approval system to make it way easier for New Zealand businesses to operate. Through this system, New Zealand is planning an enormous $20 billion investment pipeline into India over the next 15 years. But trade isn't the only focus. People are totally central to this visit too. The Prime Minister has to navigate some tricky domestic issues regarding the Indian diaspora. There are nearly 300,000 Indians living in New Zealand, making up 5.8% of the total national population. With talks of New Zealand potentially tightening its immigration rules, which could obviously impact this community, the Prime Minister will be advocating on their behalf. He'll also be hosting a massive community event in Auckland, expecting over 10,000 attendees, alongside local sports stars and business leaders. And finally, part 5, the key strategic takeaways, looking at the bigger picture. Now that we've completed the itinerary, let's zoom out for a second. This explainer reveals that this isn't merely some standard goodwill tour. It is a highly calculated effort. From securing access to Indonesian nickel to break EV battery monopolies, to unlocking Australian uranium to power the future of Indian AI, to forming a geographical maritime net across vital trade routes, every single stop serves a specific purpose: to secure India's supply chains and physical security in a rapidly changing world. As these historic defense and trade deals materialize over the coming months and years, the real impact is going to unfold. And it leaves us with one incredibly vital question. Will this intricate web of agreements successfully shift the balance of power on the Indo-Pacific chessboard? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes on how these incredible maneuvers play out.